Hello everybody and welcome to the latest edition of the Rewatch project with Hannah and Mike. I am Mike and with me as always is Hannah. How are you this evening, Hannah?
Oh, full of the joys of living. Ready to do some Babylon 5.
We're going to watch some science fiction.
Absolutely.
Some 90s science
I
fiction
feel like
television.
that's all I'm sort of keen to watch at the moment. I'm watching Next Gen on my own. We're watching Deep Space Nine together.
When you say you're watching Next Gen on your own, that really creates a very sad mental picture that is not accurate. Well, I'm a sci-fi geek. We live together. It makes... Well, exactly. It makes you sound vaguely banished, and I would like to point out that I would happily watch Star Trek: The Next Generation with Hannah, but I've got to say, because Hannah's is a Star Trek fan, but she married into it. it's a kind of, but I almost feel like she's flying on her own now.
So patronising.
No, but you know what I mean, though. It is, I feel like an interesting, not dynamic shift, but it's certainly a development.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I did watch Star Trek before you and I got together.
I know.
But
and if we hadn't have met, you would probably have...
Yeah, just not in its entirety like we have done together. But it's real comfort watch for me. So going back to Next Gen, I just need it sometimes just for my mental health more than anything.
Yeah. And it's not something that you've watched a million times as well.
No.
So it's. No. I mean, I think that's worth pointing out is the fact that it's still. I mean, certainly when you compare it to Friends and Modern Family and obvious comfort watch shows, it's still relatively fresh.
I was going to say the only time you would ever worry about, actually seriously worry about the state of my mental health is if I start watching Modern Family without any kind of interruption of any other TV show. That's when things are bad, when that's the only show that I will watch, literally.
It is interesting, I think, the psychology of it all, though, because Star Trek's very unique, I think, purely because of the volume of it. And I think that, the only thing I can think of that comes close to it is Tolkien. But even that, the volume of it is cross-media. So there's a lot of it, but there's a lot of it in the sense that there's maps and there's the language guides. And there's, exactly. Whereas with Star Trek, there is just... there can't be...
TV shows and movies.
There can't be any other franchise that has as much visual media as Star Trek. I mean, with the exception... I mean, anime, I guess, is probably the only other things. So the thing about Star Trek is that you can watch it every day and actually not really be repeating what you're watching. There's enough of it to watch it every day for a really long time before you come back round on yourself again. And by then, there'll probably have been new stuff produced. So it is a kind of... there's as much of it as you want, really.
And I think, crucially, what's good about watching Star Trek and Babylon 5 particularly, when the world is as it currently is you're kind of seeing, with Babylon 5, you're kind of seeing people deal with tense, crazy, awful situations the best they can, and you can kind of relate in some ways to it.
But there's the safety net of it being television,
and feeling like someone's the adultier adult.
Yeah.
And then Star Trek is good in the sense that everyone's got these really groovy ethos. So you can kind of just go, oh, we're all going to be all right in the end because we're going to end up like that.
There's a sense of everything has a solution.
Yeah.
That I think is
That's
tremendously
why Parks and
appealing.
Recreation was really appealing. Every single problem that they had a creative solution.
Yeah.
And that is so satisfying for me. Tonight we are watching episode 6 of season 2, namely Spider in the Web. It is the synopsis says Talia witnesses a murder at the hands of a Free Mars member. It is directed by Kevin G. Kremen and written by Larry DiTilio.
Larry. So it's another presumably standalone, not written by JMS, but we will see soon enough. Before we get on to that, though, just a quick reminder that we appreciate feedback. You can either email us at rewatchprojectpodcast@gmail.com, or alternatively, you can just leave comments here on the channel. Likes and subscribes are very much appreciated. The more people who subscribe, the more people find the channel, the more conversation ensues, and that is a great motivator for doing these things more often. Also, check out our friend shows, including Chinstroker versus Punter, The Good, the Bad, and the Odd, Talk Without Rhythm, and Film Bastards. And donations via PayPal are very much appreciated, if and only if you can afford to do so without causing yourself any financial hardship. So, any feedback, Anna?
Yep. Just one comment from our previous episode, from the coolest of cool daddies.
Okay, so this episode was The Long Dark.
The Long Dark.
Okay.
And this is in response to... we were kind of laughing, well, sort of slightly laughing at the wife's reaction to finding out her husband had passed away.
Oh, yes.
And how quickly she decided she might get it on with the doctor.
Yeah, it was a very short morning, wasn't it?
It was a short morning. So, Cool Daddy says, in 2007, I lost my wife suddenly. I can tell you firsthand there is no amount of fighting that we could have done prior that would have mattered afterwards, and no way I could have kissed another woman right away. There was a woman who tried, and giving her the benefit of doubt, I can only guess she was trying to help in her twisted way. I stopped her advances as soon as I identified them as such, and I don't think I was nice about it either. This episode's story now feels fake beyond reason, but at the time it aired, and under different societal mores, it seemed plausible. Mores. It seemed plausible and not cringy. Firstly, I am so sorry to hear that you lost your wife suddenly.
Yeah,
that
that's
must
rough.
have been incredibly difficult to deal with, and I hope you're okay. And I hope you have found happiness in whatever way has floated your boat since then. And you're completely right. It is completely fake.
Well, it's a TV thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And one of the other things about television as well is the idea of the passage of time. And that's one of those elements that I think we talked about it on the show. One of those quite slightly outdated, although it wasn't outdated at the time, but one of those outdated storytelling tropes that Babylon 5 actually was partially responsible for dismantling. That's why it's always a bit odd when you see it on the show.
Yeah.
Is this idea of how time moves, like, you know, how quickly people fall in love on television shows.
Yeah.
You know, because TV obviously was largely episodic. So what would happen or is it the other way? I always get it mixed up. Yeah, episodic. So, for example, one of the great episodes of television is The City on the Edge of Forever, the Star Trek episode. But you have to believe that Captain Kirk and Edith Keeler fall in love with each other in like a day. But you do, because you're kind of, as an audience member on television, you're in on it. You understand that they've kissed, so they're in love because it's television. And I think that shows like Babylon 5 and Twin Peaks and Hill Street Blues and Saint Elsewhere, these were all shows that in their own way contributed to the dismantling of a lot of those cliches. But they all came out at a time when those cliches still existed. Yeah. So they were dismantling them, but occasionally complicit and guilty of them at the same time. And I think particularly when you get episodes that are written by people who aren't the showrunner, there's a higher likelihood of that happening. But JMS himself wasn't immune to that. He would often fall into cliche as well. Yeah. But because he was the showrunner, it didn't feel like cliche. It felt more like classical storytelling.
I mean, the whole falling in love really quickly is... you and I have talked before about how that was something I really struggled with in the Amy Adams Superman film.
Yeah, because of the Man of Steel, and I think the issue there as well was because the film was positioning itself. This is verisimilitude. The film positioned itself as being gritty and earthy and realistic, and I'm like, well, you can't have it both ways.
No,
you can't do that.
Have
then
that out of the blue. We love each other, and this is like the love for the ages.
Well, because I remember
within
people,
about 3 seconds.
People were defending that, going, well, Margot Kidder and Christopher Reeve fell in love really quickly in the original Superman. It's like, yes, but the tone of that film was a very romanticised, fantastical film.
Yeah.
Whereas they were trying to do a kind of Christopher Nolan does, and it's like, well, so you've got to pick your lane, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I struggled with that film massively. Yeah, with Superman specifically, I found that really hard. It's like Superman for me is a franchise I struggle with. I'm not super connected to it. It's not like
nostalgia.
My childhood isn't connected.
I think also, I know this is a very unfashionable thing to say, but I do think it is a bit of a boys' thing as well.
Possibly. I mean, having raised a son and a daughter, you know, I mean, when the superhero phase hit our son, it was instant love, wasn't it?
It is a question of verisimilitude, because I think that you have to be true to the tone of the thing that you're making.
But I think that's why I found it harder, because for something where I'm not super connected to and more likely to give it a pass because I understand, you know, perhaps it's trying to do X when it should be doing Y or whatever. You know, I guess it's harder for me to buy into it. Whereas something like, if that was, like, for instance, when it happened in the episode in Babylon 5, okay, I get that it's not good and it's clunky and it's a bit cringy, but I'm happy to give the show a pass.
That's the point that I'm making about verisimilitude, because with Babylon 5, when you have things like this, you have these sort of cliche, you know, that's fine if you're making something that lends itself to that. But with Babylon 5, it's funny because Babylon 5 does do that. Babylon 5 does have the macho kind of like, I'm going to send them to hell, you know, kind of cheesy kind of, you know, Captain Kirk fisticuffs element to it as well. But it's kind of subversing that as well whilst it does it. It's a very interesting kind of dynamic by, you know, for example, the introduction of story arcs and the character reversals that you get with a lot of the characters and all of that kind of stuff. So it's tricky because on the one hand, it is subverting and changing those cliches, but it's still a 90s sci-fi show. So it's not so far removed from them that it doesn't feel terrible to have those cliches in it as well. But it is noticeable when they do it, I guess. But no, we do appreciate that. And just to echo what Hannah said, you know, I don't have the words. I'm not going to say anything trite. When something like that happens to you, I have not had that happen to me, so I've got absolutely no point of reference, but just my sympathy. And
we would be exactly the same as if one of us was to be not here suddenly.
Yeah, it's when I hear things like that I realise just what a lucky, easy life I have had. So I'm going to touch wood while I say that. But no, we appreciate your feedback as always. And
keep it coming, mate.
Should we watch some Babylon 5?
Let's do it.
Okay, so we're going to hit pause. We're going to watch Spider in, was it The Web or A Web?
The Web, I believe.
Spider in the Web, written by Larry DiTillio. And Old Lozzer. And we will be back in around 45 minutes to tell you what we thought of said episode. And we are back. So we've just finished watching Spider in the Web from season 2 of Babylon 5, written by Larry DiTillio. Hannah, so not a JMS episode? No. Again, we've had a little mini run of standalones. How did this one fare for you?
I really enjoy the character of Talia Winters, and I think she's I like her as an actress. So I was really pleased to watch this one. You know, I find her interesting to watch, to put it in Ivanova's word. She's interesting. I enjoyed the story, and I thought it was nice to get a little bit of
Business?
a little bit of business.
Gonna go like that with your hand when you say that.
A little bit of Mars business
Yes.
into things, and hearing about, because we've had a little bit of flavour of there being, dissension on Mars. So it's nice to explore that a little more and to hear about people who are trying to rectify it.
It's been one of those storylines that, even now, even in this episode to a certain extent, but it's been one of those storylines that the show has kind of examined out of the corner of its eye. It's been on a lot of news headlines and newspapers and
Very
things like
much
that.
in the
And it's
periphery.
kind of, it's out there in the ether.
Yeah. So it was nice to have that as a focus, to have a bit of cycle stuff, to have a bit of Garibaldi. Good to see Garibaldi sort of setting some closer intentions with Sheridan, trying to get that bond between the two.
Yeah,
of
like he
them.
mentions Sinclair.
Yep.
And acknowledges the sort of difference in
Yeah.
the longevity of their relationships.
But also, like, kind of saying, I am trustworthy for you. I want to be a confidant. I sort of feel like we can have that relationship.
And it's good that the show hasn't manufactured drama and that it's sidestepped the temptation to have tension, because at the end of the day, that would betray the characters, because they wouldn't. Garibaldi isn't somebody who is just needlessly belligerent.
No, and out of anyone, he knows what it's like to, make a mistake, get off on the wrong foot.
But I guarantee you, if this was made now, there would have been that tension.
Of course he would. I really enjoyed it, though. I thought it was a really good standalone, and also had a lot of just unexpected stuff.
Yeah.
That propels everything forward. What about you?
I agree. I really enjoyed this episode. And I think this is, I mean, almost word for word to echo what you were saying. This is an example of a good, solid standalone. It's still just a solid 7 because, it wasn't written by the showrunner.
It does so much.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I think that it's a really interesting one to contrast with the previous week's episode. And because they're both episodes that are standalones, but have a sprinkling of continuity in them. There was obviously, and what I've noticed now is that for every standalone we get, there's a little almost Easter egg.
Yeah.
It's as though JMS has sort of got one little thing in his kind of showrunner pocket that he lets them use for each of the. He's like, right,
Well, it's a
here's
bit
the
like,
thing.
well, keep watching.
Yeah, like the last standalone had all the stuff about Zahadum and the forces amassing.
Yeah.
This had stuff around Mars and around this conspiracy that's happening back on Earth, and the Psychor and all that kind of stuff. So in many ways, on paper, this was a very similar type of episode to the previous weeks, but one of the reasons, the primary reason why I think this one worked and the weeks before didn't, is I really feel like the writer of this episode understood the voices of the characters.
Well, Larry DiTilio has been very heavily involved.
Well, he's the script editor.
Yeah.
And also he's worked with JMS right back in the He-Man and real Ghostbusters and animation days, So in fact, I think he was JMS's, I might be wrong, but I think he might have been JMS's mentor. I think JMS worked for him.
Right.
And then that balance sort of shifted.
Okay.
And
so they're very symbiotic.
yeah, so I feel like Larry DiTilio really had JMS's ear, or vice versa, depending on how you want to look at it.
Yeah.
So, whereas in the last episode, I feel like it almost felt like it had been written by somebody who'd never seen the show, but had been given just a kind of 2-paragraph description of the character. Like it felt very much like the characters were reduced to kind of archetypes. Whereas here, I could hear the voice of the character. When Sheridan was talking, it sounded like Sheridan. And when Garibaldi and Talia were speaking, the same. The other thing as well was I think this episode's had an embarrassment of riches for really great guest actors. And one of the things that I love about Babylon 5 or any cult show from the 70s through to the 90s is because this is back when there was that big class divide between film and television. Usually you only had TV actors in TV shows because that was all anybody could afford. But what JMS does is he doesn't just use TV actors, he uses really high quality B movie actors. People like Adrian Barbeau, and Russ Tamblyn, and, they're kind of the Robert Forsters of the world, people who are these really fun screen presences who have been in loads of movies that we love. And
I've got good chops.
I've got good chops, but also it's just really nice to see them. So, for example, you've got Michael Beck plays the seeming villain here from The Warriors. You've got Adrian Barbeau from everything from The Fog. She was a John Carpenter regular. She was the female lead in Escape from New York. She was in loads. She was in like The Cannonball Run. Just tons of really fun films.
Got a Hickey from Kaneki.
Yeah, well, Jeff Conway's turned up in his first episode as well as Zach. And also, I've got to find the guy's name, the Asian actor, the one who plays the guy who gets killed at the beginning. He is definitely one of those guys. It's that guy in that thing. And let me just see what this guy's name is because I don't want to kind of give everybody else credit and then skip over him. Oh God, there's some good episodes coming up. Yeah, James Shigeta was in Die Hard. Do you remember him in Die Hard?
Cool.
And God, he was in loads of Elvis movies as well. That's interesting. But and I love that. I love the fact that they're like, well, no, let's just use people who would have cost an arm and a leg 10 years ago, but who've still got the chops, they still look great. So I just feel like all of those sort of things come together, and it's an interesting idea for a standalone. And I think sometimes the problem often with a lot of Babylon 5 standalones is it's for standalones where you tend to have the guest characters. And because the big epic storylines are usually revolving around our core cast, as they should be.
You haven't got time for guest stars.
Exactly. And I feel like when you have guest stars on a show like Babylon 5, particularly a lower budget show, it's a bit of a crapshoot. And you do sometimes get some people who maybe aren't quite of the caliber that you would want. You
get a bit of, is that rating? I hadn't noticed.
Yeah, you do. Kind of or you get people who come in and are like, what's this sci-fi nonsense? I'll just plow through this. And they don't take it seriously,
Or you get people who are really obsessed with their fake teeth.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. And the other thing as well is that you don't, when you have a lower budget show, one of the ways that lower budget manifests itself is you only get a couple of takes. It's time. You don't have very much time to shoot the episodes. So if you get an actor who is struggling, you don't have the time to coach a performance out of them. And so that can manifest itself. So I feel like because this episode was loaded with, there was the actress from Arrested Development, and Archer was in there well. Again, lots of really, and they have that. Bryan Cranston will show up later, And I think that when you get these solid B-movie actors, they're really good at just coming in and just nailing the material, hitting their marks, getting it all done in one take. But also, they don't have a condescending attitude towards the material. And
they've got presence.
Yeah.
They it's a bit like seeing the difference between Sinclair and Sheridan on screen. And this is in no way disparaging Sinclair.
Yeah, it's more of a compliment to Bruce Boxleitner, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just, he's so good.
You want to watch him.
And he's compelling to watch, yeah. And you see that with some of the guest stars as well. They're just, you are compelled to watch them.
Yeah, it is. And it's like the movie star thing's really interesting, isn't it? Like I remember, was it Hank Azaria talking about Tom Cruise? And he's like, there's famous people and then there's movie stars. And he was saying that he was at a Hollywood party and he was like, Steven Spielberg was there. He said he was chatting with Charlie Sheen. Francis Ford Coppola was there, and Kate Blanchett, all this sort of stuff. And he said that Tom Cruise walked in, and he said the whole room just changed. He said it was like a god had walked into the room. And he said he wasn't doing anything. He said there are just some people who have just got this thing. And
he's been around for such a long time.
It's like one thing I want to... I sent it to the WhatsApp group that I'm in. Have you seen Tom Cruise? You see, Tom Cruise won the honorary Oscar about a month ago for contribution to Hollywood.
No.
Watch his speech. It is an absolute masterclass in public speaking, because other people won it that day, and his entire speech, he doesn't talk about himself once, and he goes through every single other person who won an award and just talks about them and what he likes about them. There's this African-American actress, and he starts talking to her, and he starts talking about her mother. He's like quoting something that her mother, who was a civil rights activist, said, and she's crying when he's saying this, and he moves on to the next person. You watch it, and you're just like, you could be president if you did this. It was just such, and he got everyone in the room he was like, stand up if you've worked with me. Everybody here, stand up, and all of his, and you just watch it, and it's just this absolute masterclass in cult of personality, and you can see why Scientology must have just been like, wow, we are lucky to have this guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it is a really interesting thing, and I think to go back to what you were saying about this, I think there's a big difference where if you've only got $6,000 to pay somebody for 3 days, are you going to pay a actor who has had a great career and is maybe just, slumming it a little bit? Or are you going to pay somebody who's on the way up and just thinks that they're above the material? I know which way I'd go.
Yeah.
And also, if you know your audience is science fiction fans, they probably know who these people are, and there'll be some added value for them as well.
Absolutely. And I think, fans of Babylon 5 want a good performance. They don't care too much about the name.
Yeah.
So, thinking about upcoming amazing actresses and actors who are kind of phoning it in, you wouldn't want that.
No,
you
and
want
that's
someone who's going to do justice to the material.
And people who've worked with, B material and B movies. And again, when I say B material and B movies, I don't say that disparagingly. I think some of these things are great. It's just that's more of a business
just where
term.
They stand.
Yeah. It's just how those films are funded and how they're released and all that kind of stuff. And some of them are great and some of them are crap, just like A movies, But I think that what you see from a lot of those actors is they're really good at elevating material and bringing energy. That's one of the things that's just so incredible about William Shatner is how he can make anything exciting. And that's a really useful thing on television, particularly because television is very expositional.
He's a ridiculously good actor.
What?
William Shatner.
Oh, William Shatner. Yeah. Well, it's like, because of the ridiculousness of it, it's like, Mr. Scotty, we need warp 10 now, we're all dead, is ridiculous. But when William Shatner says it, Mr. Scott, we need warp 10 now, we're all dead. You're just like, oh my God, I guess we do need warp 10. You're just kind of, you can't not be drawn into it, But a lot of people wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
They'd be too cool for school. And I think B-movie actors they don't put themselves above the material, I guess. And I think that's really useful when you are shooting on some rinky-dink little stage with no air conditioning somewhere in, California.
The other thing about a guest star as well is they don't have the connection to the material that your regular cast are going to have. So they probably don't understand the significance of it as well. Because, the material in Babylon 5 is incredibly well crafted, but if you're coming in for one episode, you're not really going to know that.
And there's kind of almost like a house style as well to the show. And that's one of the things, again, to go back to Star Trek, I remember seeing an interview with Brannon Braga, and he was talking about how he really didn't like the J.J. Abrams Star Trek films. He was when pressed about it, he said but Star Trek, and I'd say the same about Babylon 5, is such a specific style. It's really hard to pin down. There's something almost classical about it. And there's something the tone of it almost feels more like a historical drama or a period movie.
Yeah.
And what he was saying was, if you watch Star Trek: The Next Generation or the original Star Trek, you can't imagine the Beastie Boys existing in those worlds. It's like, and I think that sometimes when people bring too much
Popular
of the
culture.
real world into Star Trek, although intellectually that stuff's all meant to have happened,
Yeah.
you do get the feeling in Star Trek that people don't watch movies anymore.
Well, you kind of, it pulls you out of where you're supposed to be.
It's like a dream, you know, and I think that now, I think that a lot of it's out of fear of the audiences disengaging, that there has to be something relatable. And I think a big part of this, and I don't say this disparagingly because I love them, I think the Marvel movies are a big part of that. So, for example, when they were making the choice to make Guardians of the Galaxy a comedy and to have all the music in it was because they knew that Guardians of the Galaxy, as it was written as a comic book, was just a little bit too out there for audiences. So they had to give something to anchor the audience's relatability.
To popularise it somehow.
And they very smartly were like, okay, well, let's give it a real Joss Whedon tone. And again, I adored the work of Joss Whedon, but he is one of those people who is really responsible for the way, like if you look at the tone of blockbusters now, which is the Marvel style, you know, the quippy kind of comedy beat followed by drama tragedy. That's the Joss Whedon playbook. You know, so I think that is and I think that things like Babylon 5 and Star Trek have a kind of classical purity to them.
Yeah.
And guest actors just coming in the same way as guest writers, I guess, and trying to just dial into that must be really challenging.
100%.
Should we have a look at some of the actually, sorry, one other thing I wanted to mention. I agree with you about Talia as well, is on the one hand, I could play devil's advocate and say that the actress can be a little bit sort of daytime soap opera breathy kind of, but I think that's right.
I think she needs to be.
I think that that's a choice, and I think it's the right one, because I think that the character herself is one who is living in a sense of extreme denial. You know, she's one of these people who has drank the Kool-Aid and is probably more of a victim than she realises that she is.
Well,
you know?
she's grown up since childhood in Psychor, and to bring it back again to Star Trek, sorry everyone, she's kind of like 7 of 9 in that way.
Yeah.
You know, it takes 7 of 9 a while to sort of deprogram.
De-assimilate.
Yeah. So, you know, she's had her first taste of, oh, there's something not quite right here, but I'm not prepared to say anything yet as to what I think that might be.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. And I think that her interactions with Garibaldi are interesting because, again, you could say that there's a little bit of political incorrectness in there. The way he pursues her is, by modern standards, a little piggish, you know. But again, I think that there's kind of an innocence to it in a weird way.
In this episode, it really is he's trying to find ways to cheer her up because she's having such a tough time.
I think also it's what you kind of get from this episode, and I kind of always got anyway, is that it's kind of a front with Garibaldi. Like, he's been all pushy and lechy, but I think if she called him on it and went, okay, let's go back to your place, he'd be like, oh, actually, come on, hey, let's slow down a little bit here.
Yeah.
That's the feeling I've always got, is that it's kind of part of his tough guy exterior, you know. But that's not to excuse it. It's, no. I mean, if somebody was really doing that in the workplace in a modern context, it would be completely unacceptable.
But in this episode particularly, I feel like he's being very...
I don't think he's got an agenda.
He's just being a friend.
Yeah.
And, you know, okay, she's saying it's too soon for her to laugh or smile about things. But he still manages to get a giggle out of her, which he recognises that she needs.
Yeah.
It's not with any kind of ulterior motive there.
Yeah. And also, I think that this whole idea of control that we keep seeing, we keep cutting back to, this kind of that is Manchurian Candidate kind of thing that's going on. That feels also again a little bit like some of the stuff in The Prisoner. I feel like that's another element of that kind of 60s psychedelic mind control thing as well. And I think one of the other things I liked about this episode was it was another example of these things that you think are separate, maybe they're not. You know, you've got all the stuff with Mars and the politics and the whole colonial thing going on. You've got Psychor, you've got the all the stuff with the president and the sort of xenophobia and all that kind of stuff. Maybe they're not unconnected, you know, and I think that this episode helps drive that home a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
But, okay. So it's just, I don't think I've got a huge amount of other stuff to add, but I like the fact that they're continuing this sort of mini story arc about Ivanova taking on these diplomatic duties.
Yeah.
And how Sheridan's like foist of the year. You know, he's just kind of, he's the foister, she's the foistee, you know?
And she's getting her kicks from getting a seating plan right and stuff.
Yes.
You know, which is kind of cute.
And we get a little bit of kind of insight into, like, we see the San Diego wastelands as well. So we get the sense that, because one of the things that Babylon 5 doesn't do, or at least hasn't done so far, is it hasn't really given you that much about what's happened to Earth in the next couple of hundred years. It only in the sense of what's happened to humanity out in the stars, like we know about how they first encountered aliens and where they got the jump gate technology from and all of that kind of interstellar history.
But you don't know the in-world history.
Yeah. And you'll hear sometimes, you know, references to governments that are like weird amalgamations. So you're like, oh, okay, well, this subcontinent and this one have obviously merged. And that's fine. I think that would probably be too much minutiae for them to be getting into.
Yeah.
One other thing I noticed as well is we've talked before about how on Star Trek The Next Generation, the idea of multiple data pads makes no sense. It's like having loads of iPads. And the one bit of technology they have in Babylon 5 that doesn't make sense for me as well is transparent paper. They basically look like, do you remember the old overhead projectors? Yeah. That you'd slide in. And it got me thinking that one of the big things about 90s sci-fi that has made it kind of age humorously is the one thing that none of them predicted was the smartphone. And by extension, the iPad.
Yeah.
And touchscreen technology. Because that has been, I think, even more so than the internet.
Well, Star Trek have touchscreen technology.
They do, but they do still have multiple pads, and they do sometimes have paper, and you know, it feels that was the line in the sand for sci-fi made before and sci-fi made after.
Yeah.
You know, in the same way that when you've got sci-fi that's set in the future but was made before mobile phones, you know, it just feels that, you know, as soon as the iPhone came out, transparent paper was just off the table immedly.
I mean, transparent paper is just not the one.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. It's a good visual and it looks sci-fi. And I think in the pre-broadband, pre-social media, touchscreen personal device ubiquity world, you're like, sure, transparent papers, who knows?
Just
you know,
from a privacy point of view, though, it's not really the one, is it?
But I can also almost imagine JMS walking into like the Apple store sometime in 2005 and seeing the iPod and just being like, well, I can kiss that transparent paper goodbye. that's the ship has sailed for transparent paper now. You know, it's just one of those kind of things. But one scene that I thought was really interesting was the scene where Sheridan's talking to the Jessica Walter character, the senator, and she basically tells him to spy.
Yeah,
and he's like, "That's not cool,"
and is very much like, "I don't think it's cool."
Yeah.
It.
And you see something, and I think that's kind of a really important moment for Sheridan, sort of buried in this standalone, is I think that he's realised that things that he thought were paranoia are the status is not quo.
Yeah,
you know?
status is absolutely not quo.
And I think that's kind of an important moment. And he talks a little bit about the Agamemnon, the ship that he was on beforehand, making first contact with aliens. And it got me thinking, a Sheridan on the Agamemnon during the Earth-Minbari War, that would be a great prequel TV series.
100%.
I mean, obviously, you'd have to cast a different actor now, a younger actor, but I just feel like that
Who
would be...
you cast as a young Sheridan?
That's really tricky, because they don't make him like that anymore, do they?
No.
Because he couldn't be... it's really hard. I'm thinking of a young Bruce Boxleitner, and I don't know. I don't think I watch enough things with that demographic. The only actor I've seen recently who I feel is the only younger actor who I've seen recently who I feel can do that kind of stuff is Paul Wesley, the guy who plays the younger Kirk in Strange New Worlds.
Oh yeah,
he can do
really
that
good.
Silly comedy, but also really
With
kind
gravitas.
of, but also kind of likable, empathetic. I mean, that's why they've cast him as Captain Kirk, probably.
Yeah.
But you know, you don't get a lot of people like that anymore. You know, there's a kind of weird like.
There's a fine line he treads.
Yeah. So I just, but yeah. So again, another episode about the alien characters as well. I was thinking of you while we were watching this.
Yeah.
There's a couple of scenes as well, like when he's telling the story about just the sheer likability of Bruce Boxleitner. I think in some ways that's his key charm. You know, that's his key sort of way of being able to play it.
He's got a great voice.
Sheridan asks Susan about Talia, and he's like, do you trust Psychor? And I like the way Sheridan responds, because he says, I trust individuals, not organisations. You know, so he's not willing to completely dismiss Psychor.
No.
And I like the way he kind of rolls his eyes. He's like, I know how you feel about them, Ivanova. It's like, but boy, do I. I like that Garibaldi says that tea is his third favourite thing in the universe as well, because we've got that. They talk about Project Lazarus in the late 30s, the late 2230s. And they use subjects on the verge of death through experiments. And there was a really crazy early 90s film called Free Jack with Emilio Estevez and Mick Jagger and Anthony Hopkins, weirdest cast of all time, that was the same idea. It was like people who were about to die would get plucked out of...
I vaguely remember that.
It actually got a cinematic release. I was working in the cinema where that came out. And I remember seeing the trailer and we were like, what? Like, when he got to the cast, it was like all over the place.
Yeah, I never went to see it, but I seem to recall it being advertised.
Yeah. We do get a little bit of side eye from Talia at a couple of points in this as well, like suspicious side eye as well. So it's like, can she be trusted? Can't she be? I guess we'll see soon enough.
Well, because she out and out lies.
Yes.
At the end.
But the question there is that just general loyalty to Psychor, or is it something more nefarious? That's what we're being asked to think about, I would say.
And I think there is a slight, does she believe herself what she's seen?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a fair point. Any final thoughts before we wrap up, Hannah?
No, I'm just looking forward to the next one.
Alrighty then. So a quick reminder that we appreciate feedback. Donations via PayPal if you can afford to do so without causing yourself any financial hardship. There are other ways to contribute to the show if you're unable to support us fiscally. Check out our friend shows. And what are we talking about next time, Hannah?
The next episode is called Soulmates. Synopsis says visitors to the station include Londo's 3 wives and Talia's ex-husband. Delenn has a bad hair day. It is directed by John C. Flynn III and written by Peter David.
Peter David, he's a great science fiction novelist he's written a lot of Star Trek novels. And I think he wrote some of the Babylon 5 novels as well. So...
he died last year.
Yeah, he did. He was a really great figure in science fiction fandom, and he was always at conventions as well.
Right.
So yeah, that was a real loss. But yeah, thanks for making us end the episode on a bummer, Hannah. But no, check out some of Peter David's work.
I'm looking forward to this episode because this is the episode that there's one particular thing in this episode that I have been waiting to see again because I thought it was actually much closer to the beginning of this season. And I think about it a lot. And we'll discuss that when it comes out.
I look forward to discussing that with you very soon, Hannah. So we'll see you again very soon, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye.